Good evening, and thanks for joining us for CBS News Detroit at 7. We are streaming on the CBS News app and on Pluto TV. I'm Amir Jacobson. Tonight, in honor of Black History Month, we are taking a look at a historic field of dreams in Detroit's backyard. I'm talking about the Hamtramck Stadium. Built in 1930, the stadium remains as one of only 5 major Negro League home ballparks in the U.S. It was home for the Detroit Stars and the Detroit Wolves, whose players would go on to make history for the Negro Leagues and become heroes in the African American community.
This was an important part of the history of the city of Hamtramck. It's an important part of the baseball and sports history for the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan. This is Hamtramck's own Field of Dreams. In the 1930s, it was a segregated Field of Dreams in terms of the Negro League players could not play in Major League Baseball. But this was an integrated Field of Dreams. And white teams played black teams here. In 1930, the grand opening, Ty Cobb, who was a superstar, showed up to throw out the first pitch. From 1930 to 1937, the Detroit Stars played here. The Negro Leagues were not well financed and struggled mightily during the Depression years. At least 17 Hall of Famers played on this field in the 1930s. That included our Detroit's homegrown Turkey Stearns, Norman Turkey Stearns, one of the greatest home run hitters in Negro League history, and he would have been a superstar in Major League Baseball if the color line hadn't been there. The goal is to make this usable for the community and to make it as close to what would be historically accurate as possible. It is a rare jewel that we need to polish up and make available again.
The stadium was officially placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2012. However, in 2020, Friends of Historic Hamtramck Stadium restored the field and gave it a new name, Norman Turkey Stearns Field at Historic Hamtramck Stadium. The following year, the Wayne County Commission approved an $850,000 grant to fund the renovation of the stadium's grandstands. Now, the stadium's rehabilitated grandstand and restored field has made it a destination as a community recreational resource. Joining us now is the founder and chair of the Friends of Historic Hamtramck Stadium, Gary Gillette, and president of the FHHS, Michael Wilson. Thank you all so much for being here. We were able to see it a little bit in that last video. The renovations have been fantastic. What all did you do?
Well, of course, we didn't do it really.
Well, yes, I know, but you oversaw.
I like to believe we provided the moral force and the historical information. Wayne County, Warren Evans made this a priority project. This was they contributed the most amount of money, along with grants from the Wilson Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, and from the National Park Service African American Civil Rights Fund. And then Wayne County managed the construction project. So the grandstand was new roof, the structural steel was repaired, all new bleacher, woods, seating, treads, risers, all the concrete was repaired, the brick wall, the historic brick wall in the front of the grandstand was retuck pointed, made ADA compliant. And then a new net was put up to protect fans against foul balls. Yeah,
and it looks great. I was out there not long ago with the two of you. And we talked about it a little bit then, but one of 5 stadiums still standing for the Negro Leagues, that's a big deal. And that's a big deal for us.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I mean, it really is something that we can be proud of. It's not that we tried to preserve it. It was sort of accidentally preserved, and that's because it was a community ballpark used for amateur and semi-pro sports in Hamtramck after the Negro Leagues left Detroit, the major Negro Leagues. And so it was used from the 30s till the 1997 for community sports, and also some semi-pro and professional, mostly amateur sports, high school and church leagues and all sorts of stuff like that. American Legion baseball was also used for football in the 30s before Keyworth Stadium was built. community events, war bond rallies during World War II, concerts, you name it.
All types of stuff. And one of the great things about it is it's still being used, Coach. So what's going on there now? Well, not
Yes,
right now.
yes.
It's not the right weather for anything.
Right,
outside,
exactly, right. But 2023, we have on tap a plethora or assortment of comprehensive programming scheduled. Of course, we'll have baseball travel tournaments going on throughout the course of the spring and the summer, and even into the fall. But then we'll also have some things, some festive things, such as kickball festivals, and we also have on tap a potential play that's going to be presented there this summer. Also,
Yeah.
Detroit
that is
Public
fantastic.
Theater. We're hoping to do performances of Detroit 67, the Dominique Morisseau award-winning play there this summer.
Yeah, so there's a lot on the horizon.
Yeah.
So I would
Yes.
say for you, when you're talking about the stadium to outsiders or to other people, and for you when you're coaching children in the stadium or in adults, and how do you all, I guess, bring that history back to the stadium for people to understand?
well, we always try to convey the fact that there were, historically speaking and educationally speaking, there were professional players playing here. I mean, they were of African American descent, but at the same time, we had phenomenal players playing at that, historically speaking, on that field, and that it's an honor for you to be able to tread on the same turf or the same grounds and surface as these individuals were able to, exploit their prowess and their gifts and talents.
Yeah.
So we talk about that all the time. Myself and other individuals that are training, as well as the grounds crew. So we always make sure that we convey that to those individuals when they step on those grounds, that those are hollow grounds, and you should really appreciate it, take care of it.
Yeah, you should.
So I've identified and documented at least 17 members of the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown who played on that field or managed there, including Turkey Stearns. There are also white Hall of Famers who played exhibition games there. Joe Louis had his own softball team, which he played there. His team played there, and he either managed or played for the team. He would play sometimes first base. He played there. So it's an amazing place.
It is, and for you in particular, Gary, not a native Detroiter or from Hamtramck,
So
but
you outed me on TV?
Oh, sorry, it just kind of, but you sure seem to love it now.
I do. I love Detroit.
Yeah.
I just love Detroit.
So what kept your focus on the stadium?
I discovered the history by accident. I was looking at the history in 2008, and I was a co-chair of the Society for American Baseball Research Ballparks Research Committee. So this is the kind of thing I was supposed to know. And I was trying to figure out where the site was, because I thought the grandstand wasn't there. It had been recorded as being torn down in the reference books. And then I looked at Google Earth in the middle of the night and said, wait a minute, there's something there. And I went there the next day, and there it was. And I said, boy, if that doesn't look like 1930s construction sitting there in the rain, I don't know what is. And so I was able then to find out there were some old timers in Hamtramck and people who remembered the Negro Leagues playing there, most of them in their 80s or 90s. And I was able to start digging into the history. And then in 2010, when there was people advocating tearing down what they just called the grandstand, they didn't know the history, I went to the mayor and then to city council and talked to them. And ever since then, I've had excellent support from the city of Hamtramck. Of course, they don't have any money, so we've been raising money from other sources. The biggest sources have been federal money from the National Park Service, African American Civil Rights grants from Wayne County, and the Ralph Wilson Foundation are the biggest sources that have gone into restoring the field and the stadium. We also did a successful patronicity fundraiser in 2019, which allowed us to redo the field itself, not the grandstand, and that came with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation matching funds grant. So a lot of different places, a lot of people have helped.
You talked about kind of stumbling upon it accidentally in your research. Did you also find, though, that people around the city also didn't know that much about its history?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much lost because someone had conflated it with Keyworth Stadium, And so people thought it had been destroyed for Keyworth Stadium, or that the Detroit Stars had played in Keyworth Stadium, which made no sense. It was a high school football stadium, and it opened in 1936. Yeah, I mean, the Negro Leagues, the major Negro League era is defined now as 1920 to 1948. It's a long time ago. So there are only 4 people alive today who played in the major Negro League era. Willie Mays is one of them, one of the greatest players, maybe the greatest player of all time.
Yes.
And Ron Teasley, Coach Ron Teasley of Detroit, a pioneer in his own right, who is 96. He is still alive. He played in the Negro Leagues, the major Negro Leagues, in 1948. He coached at Northwestern for decades, baseball, basketball, golf. He was a Wayne State Athletic Hall of Famer, U.S. Navy veteran, worked for the Michigan Chronicle. I mean, he's an amazing guy.
Yeah, a lot of history there. Well, we're going to talk a lot more about this in just a minute. Stay with us. We will be right back with more conversation with Michael and Gary right after the break.
Black history is a time to celebrate. It's a time to let all of America know exactly what we bring to the table. It is a celebration of remembering everything that we've done to contribute to this great nation. So you can talk about slavery, you can talk about post-slavery. You know, I come from sharecroppers in North Carolina, and for me to be here today is great. It's funny, in more than 40 years of this industry, I've got about maybe 6 stops I've made where I was the first African American to either do sports Monday through Friday, even part of a sports department. So being a part of that history is encouraging, because there are young people who follow in my footsteps and will do bigger and better things.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right, local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the new CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand, with more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it, right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
Black History Month means a great deal to me because it's a reminder of our history in this nation, and it's also a reminder of how far we've come. I think it gives us all a unique opportunity, not only myself, but society at large, to continue to learn about the accomplishments African Americans made on this country. And I think if we continue to learn about African American history, it'll make this country a much better place.
And that is what we are doing right now. We're learning more about our own Field of Dreams, the Historic Hamtramck Stadium. And we have some props now. So let's go through some of the things that you brought.
So it's like show and tell.
It is like show and tell.
Right.
So these are things, Negro League memorabilia and stuff people sell. We don't sell anything but this cap. This is a cap that we had designed for the Hamtramck Stadium. We created a new logo for the stadium itself. We have our own logo.
But I noticed in that stadium a big star.
Right, the red star is the iconic Detroit Stars logo. They went through many iterations of their uniform in the 20s and 30s, but the red star was on almost all of them. This is the classic Detroit Stars 1920s jersey, which wins awards online when they do contests for the best jersey. The pinstripes, the dark colored placket, the reverse letter on that placket, the arch Detroit, and the red star. Sometimes they had a red star on the left sleeve as well. They had a red star on the bill of the cap, the crown of the cap, in most years, not all years. It's hard to document the uniforms because so few photographs exist, but we're trying to do that.
But even the material of this.
Right, that's wool flannel, which is what they made uniforms out of then. Wool flannel, and they didn't launder them between games.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know how often they laundered them.
Thank God baseball's an outside sport.
Yeah, we've evolved.
I don't know how often they laundered. I'm guessing once a week.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're lucky, once per series, once every 3 or 4 games. They would take them and throw them in trunks and ship them, or keep them in a trunk overnight, and the players would get them. It's not stuff that you think about these days.
No, you don't. Not at all. But I can see where a lot of effort has been made into keeping all of this in the forefront, even with the Detroit Tigers when they have a Negro League game.
The Tigers have an annual Negro Leagues tribute weekend. Before they had the tribute weekend, they had the tribute games, individual games. It's the oldest regularly scheduled Negro Leagues tribute in the major leagues, and I think the best by far. They do a great job every year, and this year it's going to be in late July. And in conjunction with that, we're hosting the annual Jerry Malloy Negro Leagues History Conference, which is the only academic conference devoted to Negro Leagues history. It's the second time it'll be in Detroit. We're hosting that at Comerica Park, Detroit Opera, and Detroit Historical Museum.
Yes, and we talked about CBS Detroit can be a part of that, right?
We're looking
Because that
forward to
is going to be
hosting
really
you.
exciting. What all is going to be going on at the conference?
At the conference?
Well, basically the conference is presentations by individuals, many of them college professors, not all, about Negro Leagues history. We asked for focus on Detroit and Turkey Stearns, and also this year on civil rights and the Negro Leagues. Because one of the things a lot of people don't know is that Negro League players and team owners were active in the civil rights struggle. F.M. Manley being the most famous, who organized a boycott in Harlem of stores that black people shopped at, owned by white merchants who wouldn't hire black clerks. And she advocated many other ways and was active in many other civil rights actions. But ordinary Negro League players during their career, but most often after their career, were involved with the NAACP and other civil rights movements. In 1930, Detroit Stars fans, most of them black, not all, led by a black sports writer named Russ Collins from Detroit, they organized a boycott of the Detroit Stars because the white owner, who they thought was racist, and I think he probably was, wouldn't advertise in black newspapers and wouldn't give good jobs at the ballpark to black men. They didn't give women jobs in those days. All the good jobs are going to white men. And so they organized a boycott and brought the owner to his knees because the club was going to go bankrupt. So he turned over management of the club to a black businessman and stepped back from management. I don't think he sold it. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
That's a successful civil rights boycott. Except back then they didn't call it civil rights. It was just, the fans were upset, and a sports writer organized a boycott, and they were angry at the white owner for his racist actions and words, and they demonstrated their economic clout by forcing him to change his policies and change management.
So there was history happening all around.
There was history happening. Hamtramck was actually quite enlightened in terms of relationship between the Polish American community and the African American community before World War II. A lot of ugly stuff afterward. I don't have to tell people that. But there's before World War II, there was a lot more harmony, and Hamtramck was one of the few places in the Detroit area that African Americans could own their own homes. They sometimes rented upstairs flats to white people. They could go to white doctors and dentists. The black doctors and dentists had some white patients. They worked side by side on the line at Dodge, Maine, on the south side of Hamtramck. Back then, probably 90% of Detroit, maybe 95% outside of Black Bottom, Paradise Valley, a black person couldn't buy property because of deed restrictions, which weren't ruled unconstitutional for decades afterward.
Yeah. So for you, Coach, as a black man in the stadium, does that add any, for lack of better words, pressure when you're working with other athletes to keep all of the things in mind that people had to go through for people like us to even walk in there?
No, not really. I mean, it's of course an honor for me to be a part of it. I was born in Hamtramck, you know, so my roots grow deep in the community, in the area there. And then, you know, I was a baseball player myself, coming up through the metropolitan area, and so I know a lot of the coaches in the area. I know a lot of the athletes in the area, and then I also participated in also ran a baseball academy for 7 years, and kids that came out of that group, a lot of those guys now are going into you know, playing either elite or high-level high school baseball, or they're playing in collegiate level. And we just had a kid last year out of Detroit Edison get drafted, who started with us out of our academy when he was 7. So those kids are coming through the stadium, playing with different teams and being seen by scouts and recruiters. So it's an honor for me to be a part of the stadium and to continue to hopefully, you know, seed or pour into some of these young athletes growing up today.
Before I moved home to come to CBS Detroit, I was in Macon, Georgia, where we have Luther Williams Field, one of the other stadiums. And there's something that is really magical when you come in there and you can kind of feel the history, but there's also something that to me is sad. And I thought about it in this book that you said that you worked on, seeing some of the players that are unknown. You know, there were some fantastic athletes who made fantastic contributions, and we don't even know their name.
Right. Macon would be an example of a park that was used for minor league baseball and semi-pro baseball.
Okay.
I don't want people to get the impression that only 5 places where Negro League teams played. There are hundreds. But at the major league level, the major Negro League level from 20 to 48, there are only 5 home ballparks left. There are hundreds of other places they played in minor league ballparks, in community ballparks, city-owned ballparks. They played in a lot of black players, because there weren't many organized black minor leagues. It was very hard during segregation, especially in the South where most African Americans live. Especially hard to field a team financially. A lot of them played semi-pro ball, which meant you had to have a day job, but you got paid for playing baseball, sometimes passing the hat. You got paid to play evenings and weekends, but you had to have a day job. You were professional when you played, but you also weren't doing this, it wasn't your job year-round. So yeah, there's a lot of African American history in baseball, and the fact that baseball history used to be told without the African American contribution before Jack Robinson is a crime. And now we're addressing that along with other people, and the major leagues finally, belatedly 2 years ago, well actually in 2020, December 2020, recognized the major Negro Leagues as officially major leagues. Better late than never.
Better late than never.
That's right.
Yeah, well, coming up after the break, we're going to dive more into your book. I would like for you to explain. You said you had some...
I contributed
you
to the
contributed
book. It's
to
not my book, yeah.
Well, it is to me, but yes, for your contributed book. Also, events that are coming up and how we can help support the stadium. So don't go anywhere. Stay with us. We will be right back.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Macomb County. Hi, we're CBS News Detroit. But we don't just cover the news here. We're also here, and everywhere in between. You know, the places you live, work, and play in Southeast Michigan. We're talking less of this, and more of the stories that actually matter to you.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock.
That's right. Local news just found a home in your neighborhood. We're CBS News Detroit. Live, streaming, and on demand. Nice to meet you. CBS News Detroit. On your block, around the clock in Wayne County. CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Monroe County.
CBS News Detroit, the stories you care about.
Live, streaming, and on demand. We're on your block, around the clock.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it.
We live here. We work here.
From North Branch to Southgate.
East Point to Westland.
Wherever you live, we're here for you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
CBS News Detroit, live, streaming, and on demand. Building a better newscast, one story at a time.
CBS News Detroit, on your block, around the clock in Oakland County. It's here, the new CBS News Detroit.
Covering every corner of our community.
With experienced journalists, uncovering the stories that truly matter to you.
Making a difference in your neighborhood.
And weather experts, always looking ahead to prepare you for what's next. Live, streaming, and on demand. With more hours of local news coming soon.
Southeast Michigan news whenever you want it. Right here on CBS News Detroit.
Weekdays at 5, 6, and 11, and streaming live.
We are back, and before we wrap up, we want to touch on a few things, namely how the community can support. But first, we touched on it a little bit. Tell me about Black Baseball in Living Color.
This is a book that was just released. I was one of 6 or 7 contributors. I wrote a chapter and some other stuff in the book. It's a book about the artwork of an artist in New York who does original oil paintings that are made into Negro League baseball cards. They're just absolutely gorgeous. And you can find this book, Negro League History website. Jay Caldwell is the editor. Greg Kreindler is the author, or is a painter, excuse me, the artist.
Yeah. Oh, it is beautiful. Now,
Yeah.
if we want to support Hamtramck Stadium specifically, what can people do?
The best thing people can do is go to www.hamtramckstadium.com, or .org. We have both.
Okay.
And they can find a link there to donate. We're affiliated with the Detroit Historical Society. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, so donations are deductible according to tax law. And they can find a link to donate there. They can donate with credit card. That's the best thing they can do. Of course, they can follow us on Twitter or Instagram or on Facebook. Like us on Facebook, give us support when we announce events. We're going to, as Mike has said, we're going to have a full slate of events this summer, and there's a lot of stuff for people to come out and see.
Now, how would they get in touch with you if they want to do some type of event?
People can reach me via email at Coach Mike at hamtramckstadium.org.
That's an easy one to remember.
Yep, Coach Mike at hamtramckstadium.org. Yep, and also they can reach me via number 248 area code 505-6603.
All right, and one thing to point out also that we want to point out, you all sell the hats, but what we see here, the bobbleheads, the jerseys, the restored wood plank, you all do not sell those.
We don't. No, we're not in the memorabilia business. This is Architectural Salvage Warehouse in Detroit. They salvage wood from the bleachers before they were rehabilitated, and they have these planks for sale on their website, ASW Detroit. This is Ebbets Field Flannel, which does replica uniforms, does a great job. This is Negro League's history. They do bobbleheads for all sorts of Negro League players. This is the one thing that's ours.
The one thing, so that's the best one.
Right.
Yeah, and they can reach me if they want to purchase a hat or several hats. Yeah.
And will some of those proceeds go back toward the stadium?
All of it.
Absolutely.
Everything.
Yep, everything.
Okay, see, that's a good reason to shop.
And we have different colors too, and variety of colors too, also of the hats.
There's a form on the website for people to email us if they want to contact us, and we respond pretty quickly.
All right. Well, I am so thankful that you all were here. Thank you so much.
And we are very
Thank you
grateful
for inviting
you
us,
hosting
Mayor.
us
We
and
appreciate it.
Exposing, the stuff we're doing.
Good. Well, first of many, because I hope we can be at some of those events coming up.
Okay.
I think that'd be great.
Look forward to it.
Yep.
Thank you. And thank you for staying with us. Don't leave just yet. We're back with a look at your forecast and your local news.